The summer 23 playoffs are here, and boy, did week 8 not disappoint. We had a battle for the number 1 seed between the Rhode Island Warriors and the Game Breakers, and after the whole season of kind of leading the way, the Game Breakers find themselves at 2 in the standings. Again, heading into the playoffs, none of that really matters. Records go out the window. We're going to show you the bracket, break down all the quarterfinal matchups, and who we expect may play in the semifinals and kind of how everything fell after week 8. But the regular season's in the books. We're going to break down the last week of the regular season and look ahead to the playoffs here on the week 8 postgame show. We have Simon, Zach, Owen, and Kaitlyn. Guys, let's start with that game on court 3. And I got some crap for, usually the scheduling's pretty good. No way when I did the schedule, 3 months ago now, could I have predicted that game on court 3 in week 8 would decide, who was going to get the number 1 seed and, kind of maybe have the easier path as it fell in the playoffs. But the Rhode Island Warriors and Game Breakers both coming in after a crazy first half and a double-digit lead for the Warriors in that first half. The Game Breakers were up 5 with 5.5 to go. And I rewatched the game today and was thinking, all right, they fought it off. They battled back and kind of here they go, even without David DePina. And we're up 5.5 to go. I'm sure they would take that every time. It was an 18-3 run by the Warriors for them to finish winning by 10, but some Robert Braxton threes, Charles Alexander hitting some hook shots, and again, 1-3 for the Game Breakers in that final 5.5 minutes. They get the 2 seed. The Warriors do lock up that 1 seed, and that means Lob City's at 3. We'll get to all the standings in a second, but let's get over to that game. Let's let you guys break it down. And then I'll kind of throw in some of the things I saw from watching it back earlier today. But we'll go Owen first on this one. You can go wherever you'd like. I'll put the stats up as always. But for me, and you guys laughed at me as we kind of were previewing the playoffs, if the Game Breakers win, Rhode Island Warriors could be the 2. Could fall to 3 at that point because of some tiebreaker. Maybe they'll get the Duje's boys. And I was like, I'm interested in that matchup. And I got crap for it from people who aren't even on the post-game show, but they, have done more than prove it in that post-game interview. I'm glad I got to ask Robert Braxton kind of that question about, what does it mean after losing to Lob City and beating the Game Breakers? But Owen, on this game, that fourth quarter and that huge run to end the game, how did the Warriors kind of seal the deal and get that top seed?
I think this game had very much of a playoff feel to it throughout. It was close throughout, and it was honestly just a very entertaining game. But like you mentioned, Robert Braxton hit, I think it was either 2 or 3 threes in the clutch, and it just really demoralized the Game Breakers and uplifted the Warriors. And he's been very vocal about that article written about them where they are contenders or pretenders, and he just wanted to prove to everyone that they're definitely contenders. Here they are as the 1 seed.
So he hit back-to-back threes. So right from that moment when they were down 5, he's the one who hit back-to-back threes to give them a lead, and they would never give it up. And he would hit another 3 from the top of the key to put them up 7 after the Game Breakers had the ball down 4 in the final 2 minutes, I believe, as everything is cut off over here. But just hard to come by for the Game Breakers offensively down the stretch. And we'll go over to Simon now and kind of touch on them. And I know, not having David DePina, I think matters. And I'm going to quote some of the players who were texting today. It definitely matters, but it mattered defensively, in my opinion, maybe more than offensively for the Game Breakers. But Simon, what'd you see, in this matchup?
I saw the Game Breakers really struggling with their communication on defense. They were letting the Warriors get a lot of open shots and a lot of passes out, which ended up killing them in the end.
Yeah, and you can see here, Charles Alexander, I want to stay on this game a little bit, and then we'll also focus on that other 8 p.m. game, and you guys can make fun of my missed dunk. But Charles Alexander, 27 points and 11 rebounds, 62% shooting, so doing what he does. Marvin Dowdell, 5 for 14, but some of his threes in that fourth quarter were very timely. We talked about Robert Braxton doing a lot of his damage from behind the arc, but 17 rebounds. And that's one of the things I kind of will throw it back to Owen quickly. I'll get to kind of the Game Breakers offense that I saw that I think they were settling. And I have no problem saying that and I watched it back. So you guys can tell me if I'm crazy, but in the half court, it was a lot of threes. And that if, when they're not falling, and we'll get to their stats in a second, I mean, they were falling at an okay rate, but 35% and 15 for 43 is not going to beat a team like the Warriors who attack, right? So for that rebounding, like I was talking about, 51 to 35, and you can see there 17 offensive rebounds. So think about that, 17 extra possessions for the Warriors that the game breakers were not able to stop. And so, and even just on that point, and maybe the rebounding, for two teams that like height wise were kind of even, I think it was the Warriors who took advantage down low.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the game breakers were settling. They're still played a good game, but they're a great team, and playing a good game against another great team is not going to win you it. As you can see in the stats, both the top two guys for both teams did their things. It was the role players that really stepped up for the Warriors. Like I wouldn't even call Aiden Dozos a role player, but their non-stars played great. Whereas the game breakers, Hachi had 16 and he played good defense, but it's just the depth of the Warriors really showed here.
Yeah, and we'll go back up to them quickly, but let's shout out Charles Alexander as well, who down the stretch had two huge buckets and kind of, sealed it, kind of helped keep the Warriors momentum going. I'm going to go back to Simon and then we'll move on, but really touching on that offense for the game breakers. And I'll bring up the David DePina point after Simon kind of touches on this. In the first half, especially, and mainly the first quarter, like you start watching the game, or, the game's happening in front of you, and the game breakers, it was 4 out, so forget 4 out, 1 in, because it's 4 on 4. It was 4 out, which happens, and they're usually pretty good in that scenario. And it was a lot of threes, in my opinion, from what I saw. When it's a fast break, it's different. They have no problem attacking the basket and do it very, 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 very well. But in the half court in this game, for whatever reason, Simon, you can touch on this. I mean, their offense in the half court, which is going to be the difference in these games, because I've talked about it in the playoffs and you guys will see it, it slows down. This game did a little bit, and I think there was some executing going on. So I will stick to that point, that this game felt like in the fourth quarter how the playoff games will feel, slowing down, not as many leak outs, and so you have to execute. And so in the half court, I think the game breakers could have got better shots. They hit some threes and kind of kept them in it in that first quarter. But Simon, just that offense for the game breakers, we've seen them be so deadly, but in this one, settling, I think is fair. And I'm not sure if they would admit it, but they should, from what I saw. So what'd you see on that front, Simon?
I saw a lot of just missed shots that should have been buckets. I remember Hachi Amini missed 2 or 3 open layups, and Gian and Joseph Secator were missing some of their like pull-up shots. And I think that if they were able to capitalize on those shots and make them, then it would have been a much different outcome.
Yeah, and just to get to some of the quotes in a second, I totally agree. But one of the points that Anthony Graziano made was, obviously having David DePina would help any team, having him there versus not there. Him guarding Charles Alexander, I think, is what was missing in this game. And the only thing Anthony said, not making excuses at all, just it would have then had Joe Secator on somebody else, which kind of just shifts all of the defensive assignments kind of down a man. And they're more switchy, and, they're not as like, Joe kind of has to get Charles for them to be happy. And then, and like I said, it kind of trickles down. So, yeah, I think that was a huge thing. And we saw David DePina kind of go at Jose, right, last week. And we touched on that. Him against Charles, if these teams meet again, will be interesting and will definitely change some things. So I'll get the bracket up here at the end. I'm not going to get too fancy, but the Rhode Island Warriors claim the 1 seed. They'll take on Ball Don't Lie, who are the 8 seed. It is the Game Breakers, the 2 seed, who will take on the Air Mambas to kick off the quarterfinals. Let's get to the game that was to decide the 4 seed between the Ice Trays and Halfway Crooks, also going on at 8 o'clock on Court 1. I did rewatch some of this game just for kind of like therapeutic purposes, to be honest, after how that first quarter went. But it is the Halfway Crooks coming out on top, getting that 4 seed. The Duye's boys would then at 9 o'clock take care of business to jump the Ice Trays because of that overtime game. So we talk about how close maybe that seeding difference is for the Ice Trays and the Duye's boys. So it will be Duye's boys 5, Ice Trays 6. We already talked about the Air Mambas and Ball Don't Lie, leaving Lob City at 3 once, they took care of business, but then once the Warriors won, they were at 3 by a game in the standings. So we will go, and I wrote down names. I don't forget where I put them. We'll go to Zach first on this one, but Zach, Ice Trays didn't want to miss in the first quarter, and they kind of came back down to earth, but it was a huge third quarter that I'll touch on. But no Jeff Winchell, no Taj Eddington again. Hopefully both of them are back. Let's, for everyone's sake in the playoffs, that's how the halfway Crooks will be at their best. And Jeff Winchell will be back. Taj is to be determined. So I'll have to do, I don't know what I have to do to get him back. I don't know. He's been busy. It's all good. But Zach, in this one with who was there, and the Ice Trays, came out and for that first half held a 9-point lead going into halftime. So what did they do well? And then kind of how did things flip?
As you touched on, it seems like every time a team plays the halfway Crooks, they go off from 3. Specifically, Seth Coates, I don't think he missed the 3 at all in the first half.
It's the purple. It's the. I'm changing my jersey color. It's got to be the purple. Well, I'll ask Gian what's his least favorite color is. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, they did not miss, I don't think, a single 3 in the first quarter, and then only a couple 3s in the second, and then they cooled off in the half. Specifically, Seth Coates, which is someone you wouldn't expect to be hitting 3s like that.
Yeah, and then kind of we'll stay with Zach quickly. That third quarter. What do you remember from that one? And I think the top here is a little wonky. I'll get you the number, but it was a huge run by the Crooks and a lot of Dominique Langston.
Yeah, Dominique Langston picked up the slack with no Jeff Winchell and no Taj Eddington. You would think it would be Spence or Devin Devon Pino, but he went off. They stayed away from the 3. The Crooks only attempted half the 3s that Ice Trays did. They were just aggressive down low.
Yeah, and then Kaitlyn also over there. So we'll kind of fast forward a little bit and give you the fourth quarter and that down the stretch play for the halfway Crooks. So 23-9 third quarter after being down 9 at halftime. A lot of Dominique Langston in that. And then it was even despite all of that and having a lead tied at 58 with 7 to go. And then Dom Langston then got an and 1, missed the free throw, got it back and laid it in. So it went from a tied game to the halfway Crooks being back up 4, and that was kind of where it carried out from there. But Kaitlyn, as far as the halfway Crooks and kind of heading into the playoffs down that stretch, a good sign, I'm sure you'd say, for the halfway Crooks.
Yeah, in the second half it was much improved. They started getting to the basket more and they were getting more fouls. They could improve the free throw shooting a little bit, but I think if they just get off to a better start and maybe hit some more 3s, but they forced a lot of turnovers and got 9 steals. So in the second half, they played a lot better defense. Yeah, and even just looking at, I'll give you some of the stats and we'll look at those turnovers, and then I'll talk about the free throws. But Dominique Langston, 32 and 9 with 6 assists. Devin Devon Pina, 20 and 6. Spence Freeman, 12 and 10. And I somehow had 5 and a missed dunk. We'll get to that in a second, maybe. Nick Lemoyne, 28, led the way with 11 rebounds as well. Seth Coates, like you guys talked about, with 4 threes. And then 12 for 32 from 3. So like you guys said, a lot of 3s from them. 9 turnovers for the Ice Trays, and I have to cheat. Sorry, people watching. 9 turnovers, but in that second half, I think it kind of flipped in the turnover battle. And speaking of the free throws, I made them both, so it's my one time to brag. I get to make fun of Jared Hansen for missing all 4. I know he's still upset about that for sure, with how many he's made, how many big ones he's made over the seasons here. But we'll get to let's get to some of these other games quickly. We kind of jumped out of that one, but the Ice Trays, just to give you their record finish, 3-5. So that puts them in the 6th seed because they did finish with the same record as the Duje's boys, but like we talked about, lost to the Duje's boys head to head. Let's quickly, because these were, we're going to get to the one that was the least out of control, maybe surprisingly. The Duje's boys at 9 o'clock needing a win to get that 5 seed and set up a rematch with the halfway Crooks. They take down Ball Don't Lie 80-67, but there were some moments there, and I'll let you guys kind of, maybe we'll split up kind of 2 and 2 for these next 2 games, but it was the Ellis Einhorn, I'm not going to miss tonight game. 10 for 11, I believe. He had almost all of his highlights up on Instagram the next day, which is awesome. But Ball Don't Lie in that game, and
I don't know if you guys can tell me if I'm crazy, and I'll get the stats up here. Not sure if there was ever a moment where I was like, I'm not trying to be like mean, but I was never like worried because Brian Yars and Des Williams were playing pretty well, and kind of were always able to hold off anything that Ball Don't Lie was trying to do. But it was still a single digit game for most of this game, which is again, not what I expected after everything I said earlier about the Duje's boys. So you guys can fight it out on this one and definitely touch on Ellis, but whoever wants to jump in, go ahead on how Ball Don't Lie was able to hang around for sure.
I think like you said, all those threes that Ellis Einhorn made was just unreal. Like the fact that he made 10 out of 11 threes in that game. And I think he finished with 34 points. 30 of his points were from three, which is just crazy to me. And I think that is just the biggest thing that kept them in the game.
Yeah, and so 30 of his 34, and they only scored 67. So there's a math equation for you. Kevin DeCina with 18 and 10, and he was attacking and kind of getting his team going. Like, why are we shooting so many threes? And I want to see how many. There was other words in there, but it's a kid's show, so we'll save the language. But 10 for 23, for Ball Don't Lie, and all 10 by Ellis Einhorn. Let's get down to the Duje's boys here and kind of touch on them as they get a rematch with the halfway Crooks, a third matchup. The first two didn't go so well, but you see Kyle Wolf with 25, so let's shout him out. Des Williams 24 and 17, and Brian Yars 17 and 9, and putting on some highlights for the second week in a row for Brian Yars. But I will put Zach on the spot, and we'll save the other two for later. But Zach, the Duje's boys in this one got some momentum. We'll see if they can carry it into their quarterfinal matchup. But 7 for 30 from three. I mean, I think they still would admit they would like to shoot it better, and will need to next week.
Yeah, I feel like a big difference between this team now versus how they were earlier in the season with Des Williams and Brian Yars back is the chemistry looks way different. You know, they're active on the sidelines, they're laughing, they're having fun. They were yelling jet ski every time someone hits a three. It seemed completely different from the team a couple of weeks ago.
For sure. And so we'll see, a third matchup is not ever, like it's in football, right? They say it all the time, like, the third time, like just crazy things happen. Well, there was almost two matchups. And I don't think, and then the Warriors and Ball Don't Lie are the other matchup for the third time this season. So I guess we'll see if that one after the Ball Don't Lie's hot shooting will get maybe a little interesting in the playoffs. If you don't miss, in theory, right, guys? I mean, you can win, you just can't miss. Like at all when you're Ball Don't Lie playing the Rhode Island Warriors. To kick off week 8, Lob City having that 2 seed to play for. Not that they've been 2-3, I think at one point possibly even a 4 seed, but they've been all over the place. But they take care of the Air Mambas 107-79. 6 players there, no Victor Cashew, but notably no Greg Holt, who now is ineligible to play in the playoffs. You saw Carl Lee sitting there, and he's out for the playoffs. I believe it's like 9 or 10 weeks with an ankle injury. So that puts him past the playoffs almost for sure. So what we saw in week 8, adding in Victor Cashew, who you guys have not seen much of. I think he played in one game and was present for 2 others, or maybe played in 2 games and was present for a third, but you haven't seen much of him, but he's been around a while and is a defensive beast, very smart, and can handle the ball. So they will definitely be happy to have him for the playoffs, but taking care of the Air Mambas. And we'll go to Kaitlyn on this one. In Lob City, kind of having 6 players, and I would say it's fair for them too. We kind of saw some of the same things we talked about with the Duje's boys, that energy and that teamness coming together for Lob City, which is one of the things they've been talking about all year.
Yeah, they looked good from the jump. I think they only had 4 players to start the game. Jose Mercado came in the second quarter, but still ended up with 20. And Colin Burns was a huge factor, had 37 points. They shot the ball well, and they always play good defense. So I think it'll be interesting to see how their injuries impact them, but they'll be a tough out.
Yeah, and we'll see if anyone can take them out. They'll get the ice trays in the first round for Lob City, which Yeah, I mean, they played once before. I know we'll have a preview on that game, and the Ice Trays kind of coming off a close game. We'll see if they can get something together against Lob City. But for the Air Mambas, Ashton Alcock, 25, Mario Valerio at 16, and I'm sure, 4 for 17 is not what he was looking for. And one of those was a half court bank shot to end the first quarter. So, 3 for 16 is almost more what he actually shot. But hey, it counts for 3. Mark DaCosta with 16 and a couple threes, and the other 2, Jose Rodriguez and Anthony Ramsey with 11. So Owen, the last one to jump in on this one, even maybe focusing on the Air Mamas a little bit. No Olajide rolling. So we would like to see, their entire team there for when they take on the Game Breakers next week in that 2-7 matchup. But what can you take from this one for them as we kind of look ahead a little bit to that quarterfinal game?
I think this game is definitely a bummer for Mario Valero. He didn't shoot the ball well, but they had other players, like you said, Ashton and Mark, who shot the ball well. So it's good for all their other players. I think if Mario can shoot a little more efficiently and they work more cohesively, they definitely could make some noise in this playoffs. But then again, they get the Game Breakers, which is definitely one of the hardest matchups, if not the hardest matchup. And then as far as Lob City, they did nothing crazy in their eyes, or in my eyes. They did nothing crazy, but they still scored 107, which is terrifying if you're all the other teams, if this team comes out here and plays incredible.
Yeah, and I think 68 or 67% shooting for Lob City is a very easy way to get to 100 points when they're attacking the way they were and getting to the hoop. And that is a credit to kind of having that depth that they're used to. So let's get the bracket up here and we'll do some previews, but the regular season is in the books. So give me 1 second on that. You guys should be able to see that, right? Bracket up there. So you can see our official playoff bracket. You can see how it's going to lay out. So the 1 and the 4 on the same side, the 2 and the 3 on the same side. So we'll have the quarterfinals coming up this Tuesday. We'll kick it off with Game Breakers, Air Mambas. You'll get those 2 middle boxes right there, the Crooks and Duje's boys, Lob City and the Ice Trays at 8 p.m. And then the Rhode Island Warriors and Ball Don't Lie at 9 p.m. And they've played all of their matchups at 9 p.m. So it's just run it back. Let's see what happens in that one. But let's start. I think we can kind of just touch on. So we're going to have articles for these. And so we'll be doing previews as well. Hopefully the Low Post podcast will be back as well. And they'll be talking about the playoffs, I'm sure. All the intern analysts voted for All-Stars, individual awards, all NBA first team. So that'll be kind of announced next week, but that was voted on at the end of the regular season. Okay. So anything in the playoffs doesn't count, but we'll put Simon back on the spot. So you get to pick a matchup and we can always double up and then just pick whatever matchup you want and you can double up and then we'll cover the ones we don't hit. And I think that's the best way to do this, but pick a matchup and give me your key to what you think will be the key for either team to win, Simon, in whichever direction you'd like to go.
I'm going to go halfway Crooks and Duje's boys. I think, in my opinion, these 2 teams have the most depth and very good chemistry from both of them. And I think that this matchup could go either way. If the Duje's boys comes out shooting hot and coming in with the intensity that they came in with in week 8, then they'll get the win. But if the halfway Crooks come in and I think the halfway Crooks are a bigger team too. If they come in and get those rebounds and get their guys down low to get the easy buckets, then I think they could win. But either way, I think this is going to be one of the best playoff games.
And as I mentioned, the halfway Crooks won both matchups. The first one got a little out of control, and I really don't know what happened in that one, and I almost want to throw that one out. But in the most recent matchup, 76-61, and if you remember, it was the Duje's boys with a 6-point lead after the first quarter. So they had some things that were working, and they made a lot of shots. And in that one, notably, no Dominique Langston, so that's huge, and no Taj Eddington. So both of those players were there in that week 2 matchup. Take that for what it's worth. Yeah, we'll go Zach next. I'll just go in order on my screen so I don't mess it up. Pick any matchup. You can double up, do whatever you'd like, and we will hit them all. But Zach, what's a key to one of these matchups for you?
I'll say Lob City Ice Trays. For Lob City, I'm not going to say it depends on, but they're a completely different team when Nuri Mahmoud shows up. Like, you could see the difference between this week and last week. When Nuri's there, he's like, He's like their Marcus Smart. He's the like core of the chemistry. And then for the Ice Trays, they've been on like winning wise not a hot streak, but Nick Lemoyne's been playing incredible these last few weeks. If they can rely on him and Seth Coates keeps hitting threes like that and Justin Tisworth keep hitting threes like that, it could be closer than people think.
They faced off in week 3, so over a month ago, and I would agree things have changed. I think for both teams, but the Ice Trays especially, I think have figured some things out. Doesn't mean that I think they're going to win, and not to spoil my pick, I guess, but I think you'd be a little crazy to go against the champs when they have all their players. Again, you never know who's going to show up, and having Nuri Mahmoud is huge for them. But in that one, it was 23-10 after the first quarter, Lob City, and they kind of just ran away with it and had most of their players. And that was one of the games Victor did play in. So there you go. So the Ice Trays have seen Victor Cashew Jr. And in that one, 36% shooting for the Ice Trays from both the field and from 3. So I'm sure they'd want to improve on that when these teams face off again. Kaitlyn, which matchup and what's your key?
I'll go with the Game Breakers. I think if the Game Breakers just get back to how they've been playing the whole season, and they were saying that they have a huge size advantage against the Air Mambas, which I agree with. They have all their guys. If they have DePina, I think if they get to the rim, get to the basket, they'll be pretty successful and they'll go far.
And those two teams faced off in week 4. It was a 21-point win for the Game Breakers, and it was a 15-point game breaker lead after the first quarter. So they kind of just sustained that and coasted, and both Gian Abadijan and Joe Secator had over 30 in that matchup, but that was one of Mario Valerio's 32-point games. So we will see if they can get their whole team there. No Mark DaCosta last time these two teams played. So we'll see. We'll see what that means. Owen, you can pick a different one. You can pick the same one. It really, whichever one you'd like. Go ahead.
I just want to say Mark DaCosta needs to be in that 3-point contest, but I'll go with the 1-8 matchup. I think this is very business usual. Rhode Island Warriors, do what you've been doing all year, and ball don't lie. You better hope Ellis doesn't miss and takes an extra 30 shots.
Yeah, and I know both of those matchups, I will turn the bracket off, but I know both of those matchups, and I'm trying to, I know what weeks they are, 68-49. So that was in week 2. So actually not as wide of a margin as I thought. And then it was 110-72 in week 7 when the Warriors were in full swing. Yeah, I mean, I think that about does it. Anything else from you guys? I mean, I think now let's see how it changes throughout the playoffs. Let's do this. All right. I want your 2 teams you're going to have in the finals and who you think's going to win. Let's start some shit, and I'm in. So that way, when you see people this week at the games, they get to have some extra motivation. Hearing you guys, think they're going to lose before the finals. All right. So we'll go backwards, and that's more fun for me. So Owen's on the spot based on the bracket, your 2 teams in the finals, and then who you have winning it all.
I think we get a rematch from this week, the Warriors versus Game Breakers. I know Lob City's not going to like that, and they can definitely beat the Game Breakers, but I don't know. It's honestly a coin flip. I think it's just going to be a great game either way. I'm not going to make any enemies. I'm not picking a winner.
Yeah, you are. Pick one.
Game Breakers.
All right.
If they get DePina, I think they have a chance.
And then there goes Owen qualifying it. If they get their full team. All right, fine. He's just going to sit on the fence. No worries. Kaitlyn, all right, who you got?
I also have to go with the rematch from this week. I think obviously Lob City could win, but the Game Breakers have already gotten to them twice. And I think the Game Breakers will have revenge this time against RA Warriors, and I think they come out victorious.
All right, so 1 pick for the Warriors, right? 1 for the Game Breakers. I think, because I have seen this story too many times, and Lob City is they turn it on in the playoffs, whatever analogy you want to use. I think a big thing for them that you can't really plan for is not having Carl Lee. And I think that's the only part of this equation that gives me pause, and I am leaning more towards the way you guys are going. I am not making a pick and will not be pressured into making a pick like I'm pressuring you guys, but that would be having Carl Lee for Lobs is huge. It is, and he's a huge player and he's a huge part of their team, but he's a whole different, he gives them another dimension that is very consistent because of how he plays so close to the basket. Zach, all right, are you going to pick anybody different? And, we're running out of time, guys. The season's almost over. Your chances to suck up are running out. I'm just saying, I dropped it in the interview. I'll get it on the post-game show before I forget. I'd hate to play the halfway crooks. You never know. One game, who knows? Owen, don't make a face. All right, Zach, who you got?
You know what? Everybody else has said Warriors, Game Breakers, so I'll switch it up. I'm going to say Warriors, Lob City. Third time's the charm. Playing a team 3 times never goes to plan. Even without Carl Lee, I think with Nuri back and Colin Burns, if he shows up, I think they get it done. And then I'll take Warriors for the championship, though.
All right, so Warriors
that rematch
over.
should be interesting.
Yeah, Warriors over Lob to kind of avenge that earlier loss. And usually my stance is wait for Greg Holt in the playoffs. And last year he did not disappoint, where he kind of did the same thing and was in and out in the regular season. And then in the playoffs was back to Greg Holt. Well, he is ineligible and he is aware of that. So I'll go on the Victor Cashew Jr. train, and I will say, keep an eye out when he shows up and is motivated as everyone on all of these teams will be in the playoffs. All right, Simon, who you got?
I got Game Breakers Warriors for the finals. I'm sorry, Joey, but I think that the Game Breakers, they have a really good shot of winning it all this year. The fact that they lost to the Warriors by 10 without their arguably third best player, in my opinion, David DePina. I think that if he's back for this, then their starting lineup with Gian, Joe Secator, Hachi, and David DePina, I think that's just unbeatable.
Yeah. Hey, huge piece for them, especially in a big game like that, where it comes down. It's one game. So having everybody there is huge. All right. These 4 didn't want to, flex the muscles and make a pick and ride it out. It's fine. It's all right. I'm not even saying the halfway crooks. No one likes the Duye's boys, so I get it. There's not a lot of upset potential, but we'll see. The Duye's boys were an 8 seed. I think it was the season we had 14 teams, definitely at least 12 teams. So they had to play in like the play-in, right? And then they got the 1 seed. It was like the 8-9. They won. They beat the 1 seed who actually had Jose on it. Duye's boys did. And it was a very different Duye's boys team, as I've been reminded by you guys. Like, wait a minute, it's a different team, right? Then I was like, yes. And then from there, they, were in the semis and took care of business and won the finals. So it's been done, but is unlikely, as as Lob City has won every other year besides that one. So we'll see with the playoffs here, guys. Good job. You guys can watch all the games, all the playoff games live on YouTube. And the one that goes up on Facebook from Court 3, youtube.com/legacy leagues. We're going to be trying some other stuff. We'll see how the semifinals and finals go, as far as some commentary and some other Snapchat channels. We're trying to get away from, the Snapchat highlights we've always done, because we have the live stream and it's great and it works out well, except when it decides not to post the full video. But we will we'll work that out for the playoffs. But for Simon, Zach, Kaitlyn, and Owen, good job, guys. And good job making picks. Owen tried. He tried to get out of it, but not allowed on the post-game show. I run a strict show here. Make your picks. If you see these guys and you don't like their picks, make sure you tell them. They're all ready for it. It's been 2 months. They're ready for you guys, in case anyone needed any extra motivation. But quarterfinals this coming Tuesday, then the semifinals and the finals. All games live on YouTube. Stay tuned for the other podcast and everything else we have coming this week. And thanks for watching the post-game show.